do want to make a couple of introductions, and then Andrea's going to make some comments as president of the board. And then I want to say a few things about some of the people who have contributed and supported the work of the Institute that's made this possible. And then Bruce and Susan are going to talk about Alan and Charlotte, the namesakes of the building. Then Mark Gunderson, our architect, is going to give us a little short presentation on some of the design considerations that have gone into the building to support the work and the programs that we have with the Institute. And then I've got 3 short videos of 5 minutes each that I want to show you for those of you who don't know, the Reeds and Sandy Berman, who are the ones who are financially responsible for us being able to be here. I wanted you to have a short introduction to them, and then we'll have our dedication host at the end, Bob Potter. So the 3 people I would like to especially recognize and introduce here at the beginning. First of all, Andrew Johnson, President of the Board of Trustees. We have 2 very special guests tonight whose association with the Institute and General Semantics goes back to at least 1945. The first is Billie Jane Bagley, who's here from Phoenix. She attended a seminar in Chicago with President Steve back in 1945. And then we've also got David Levine, David Linwood here, also from comes here from Knoxville, Tennessee, where he's a professor of mathematics at the University of Tennessee. He also attended the first seminar in Chicago in 1945. He also has the distinction of working not only for the Institute as an office health person while he was going to college at the University of Chicago, but also worked for the original Society for General Semantics, which at the time was also in Chicago. And then as the Institute moved east, David also worked there in Connecticut for a couple of years, but he's a contemporary of David Borland's. For those of you who are familiar with E-Prime and David Borland, David and David worked together cohorts back in the late 40s. So, thank you, special guests, for coming. Andrea?
This is such an honor for me to be here and to represent the Institute of General Semantics as president of the board. And all I can think of was, I'm so lucky. How lucky I am to be here at this time, at this place, and to have the opportunity to really just revel in the experience of being in our home and seeing so many people who worked very hard to complete this, to have the board of directors support and just be behind this whole initiative. And the experience for me has been one where just lucky seems to encompass it. I wanted to recognize a few people too, because I have been fortunate to work with an extraordinary group of people, and I wanted to recognize our board of directors and the ones who are here from the board of directors. If you wouldn't mind just standing so we can see who you are and what you look like. Without their support, vision, and the gutsiness to go ahead, we all wouldn't be here today. I also want to acknowledge Steve for being our visionary, for being our Fort Worthian, our worthy Fort Worthian, for doing so much of behind-the-scenes work that wouldn't have made this night possible without his long hours of dedication and the ability to think for the future as well as for the present. So Steve, thank you so very much. In addition, it's very important to thank Kristen, who has been here, who has been here and has supported Steve and has been a wonderful host to us since we've been here this weekend. And I know that this has not been the easiest of times to be involved with the Institute of General Semantics, but we're so glad that you decided to take a leap with us and you worked very hard project as well. So thank you, Kristen. I recently retired from my position as associate professor at Alberta College in Milwaukee. And thank you. And one of the things that I needed to do was to clean out my emails. I saved many, and so many emails. And it took me a long time to go through them. And as I was going through them, I noted some I need to save for business reasons or perhaps some contacts that were very important to me. And then I came across a whole raft of emails that I had saved. And not only were they precious emails to me because of the business that it was involved in these emails, but because they represented the soul and the support and the gentleness of a very important person, and that's James Holcomb, who was our fundraiser guru, and always there with a laugh and a smile and a kind and gentle word, and always encouraging. So James, thank you very much. And while I know you're going to hear from Mark Gunderson, I really wanted to acknowledge him. When I first met Mark almost a year ago, and we were thinking about how we're getting the fundraising campaign underway, and he had these wonderful drawings that I could not read or even comprehend, except everybody told me they were very good. I believe that. But I was also struck with how this was not just a project for him or a business deal. He was in the trenches with us. He understood the importance of it. And his vision, along with Steve's, was something that just seemed to cut through a lot of the morass that happens when you are looking at creating something. His enthusiasm and his good humor and just wonderful way of listening to everybody was something that I walked away impressed with, and I'm so grateful that you're a part of this process. So thank you, Mark. I hope you begin to see how lucky I am to have all of these people in my life. A couple of things that happened during our board meeting this afternoon. We also want to recognize some of our present and past board members, and I just wanted to mention this because I think it's very important for you to also hear this. What we did was we named 2 new honorary trustees, and this is a distinction that hadn't happened over the last 20 years. So it's not something that we just give out like we're doling out cards to people. But these are 2 people who were distinguished disseminators of general semantics, who were integral to being a part of the Institute of General Semantics, and someone from whom we all learned and feel a great deal of dedication to. And that's Sanford I. Berman, who had planned to be here tonight. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to do that. And Harry Maynard, who's had a long-time connection with Time Life magazine and is a stalwart member of the Institute. So those are our 2 new honorary trustees. And also we named 3 fellows of the Institute. And these are people who have been recognized for the ideals that they have set forth for being wonderful, strong, creative, memorable educators. And one of them is Kenneth Johnson, who was my mentor, as well as Rick Hoffman's mentor. Another is Stuart Maper, a scientist extraordinaire, and as I watched him teach and do his work, I remember thinking, I don't understand what he's saying, but I'm fascinated. I loved his teaching, and also was an incredible person, as well as Robert Kula, who was someone who was indescribable, as a humorist, as a musician, as an artist, as an interpreter, and a mainstay of general semantics. He was someone, when I first met him, I knew this was someone his impression on me was going to last a lifetime. And it lasted his lifetime. And it will last my lifetime as well. So those are our 2 new honorary trustees and 3 new fellows of the Institute. And I'd just like to give them some applause, even though finally, for my part, I'm happy to be able to thank some people who made significant financial contributions to our capital campaign fund, and that is a big part of what made this a reality. We are going to hear a little bit about and that one of them is Sanford Berman. And as we sit in this room right now, this is now being called the Irving J. Lee Seminar Center, donated by Dr. Sanford Berman. So he provided us with a $200,000 gift, a naming opportunity, and also, since he is an educator as well, and dedicating this to another educator, Irving Lee, he also is funding a Berman Scholarship. So our Berman Scholars Program we hope to initiate probably starting next semester, but next year, where we will have someone who will be working on special projects that they identify, and they will receive a stipend for that work, and we hope we'll use the Institute and its archives as wonderful research material for them. I'd like to acknowledge the gifts that are greater than $5,000 have been pledged by Billie Jane Bagley, Walter Davis, Edith Pula, and Steve Stockton. So thank you to those who pledged gifts. Those contributing gifts greater than $1,000 will also be acknowledged with a permanent plaque that's going to be on display. And today, these names are going to be Phil Artery, who is also a new board member, Alta Brock, Fred Caruso, Robin Farine, Suzanne Herbst, in memory of Lewis, Greg and Pauline Hoffman, Lou Giacobelli, Andrea Johnson, and her husband, Tom Heavy, Carol Johnson, the widow of Ken Johnson, Robert A. Johnson. By the way, none of the Johnsons are related. Just a lucky coincidence of naming. Bruce and Susan Kodish, Doug A. Knudsen, Dorothy Lander, the estate of Annie Dix Myers, Rex Monahan, Frank Mason, Robert Potter, Nancy Redpath, Irene Ross Maper, a widow of Stuart Maper, Jackie Riddick, a new board member too, Lynn Schultz, and Dr. Dorothy Schultz in memory of her husband, Donald. So those are some people we also are grateful to acknowledge. Another way that I'm very lucky and fortunate is that there are other people who are now going to be talking and presenting information for your edification, entertainment, and I'm going to sit down and let the program continue. Thank you very much.
In 1999, I was on the board of trustees, and we had a particular day when we had a kind of a brainstorming exercise that was precipitated by the question, what would we do if we received a gift of $100,000? And we talked about that for a little bit, and then the question was re-asked, what would we do if we got a gift of $500,000? And so we talked a little bit more and had a little bit different ideas and different priorities. And then the question was, what would we do if we got $1 million? And at that point, we started talking about we would want a place of our own. We wouldn't want to have to be renting or sharing space with someone, but to really have a place of our own. And then in 2002, Charlotte Reed died. A long time, going back to 1938, with the Institute in various capacities, first as Korzybski's literary secretary, and then as supporter of Ben Kendig, who was Korzybski's successor as director, and then as director herself, and then as mentor and teacher and tutor and all kinds of roles. 3 months later, her husband Alan died, Alan Walker Reed. And the combination of their two estates left the Institute with a little over $1 million of bequest. And so at that point we started thinking about and talking about and considering what would we need to do to have a place of our own. And in conjunction with that, we decided that in addition to the Institute needing a physical home, an extensional physical being able to touch home, it also made sense to look at doing that in a place where it made sense financially and there was an ease of travel and people would like to come to, and we decided to relocate here to Fort Worth. Getting here hasn't been easy, and I just want to give a short history of the Institute to reflect where the Institute has been throughout the years. The Institute was established in 1938 in Chicago, primarily because of the $25,000 grant that Albert Korzybski received from Cornelius Crane of the Crane Plumbing Manufacturing family fortune. who was taken with Korzybski and funded a lot of his initial work. He also received a lot of money from Mary Moran's mother, who was Arthur Stone Dewing's wife, who Arthur Stone Dewing taught at Harvard Business School back in the early 1900s, who is generally credited with developing the case method of business study. So when you hear about Harvard Business School and the case study method of analyzing problems, that dates back to Arthur Stone Dewing, who was one of the first honorary trustees of the Institute, and whose wife funded a good portion of the initial work of the Institute. In the spring of 1946, after World War II ended, the rents, there was a great housing shortage in Chicago, and the rents exceeded the Institute's ability to pay at the building where they rented space in Chicago. So they were forced to move and ended up going to Lakeville, Connecticut, and took up residence in a house, a great old Victorian estate that Kendig, who was Korzybski's education director, purchased, that the Institute more or less leased from her. It was her home. Korzybski lived there. They had a library there, but it was the private residence and home of the Institute. Kendig died in 1981. The Institute inherited the house, sold it, and then relocated to Baltimore, Maryland for 3 years, where Bob Kula was director and operated the administrative work out of his garage or
It was a separate
buildings, okay, in Baltimore. Then 3 years later, in 1986, the Institute moved to New Jersey, in Englewood, New Jersey, where Marjorie Zellner became the executive secretary and operated a shared office with her husband, who ran a consulting company. And so the Institute was sharing space with Marjorie Zellner's husband. And then Marjorie developed an illness and resigned in early 2000. The Institute then moved to Brooklyn, New York, under the directorship of Jeff Mortkowitz and his wife Martha, who ran the Institute from their home office in Brooklyn. Then in January 2004, the Institute moved here to Fort Worth, and we've been operating from our temporary office at 1412 Texas Street, which we thought was going to be there for about another 6 months, until about mid-2004, when we anticipated moving into this building that we had purchased in November 2003. But we didn't move in until last week, so we're here now. And there's a nice little historical tie between here and Chicago, because I said that Cornelius Crane had funded the initial institute with $25,000. When Mark specified the individual detailed elements for this particular building, he had specified Kohler toilets. And as a cost-cutting move, our contractor came back and said, I'm just suggesting you might be able to save a little money if instead of going with Kohler, you went with another supplier of toilets like Crane. So we thought, well, how appropriate would that be? Finally, after all these years, Crane's getting a little bit of return on his investment. So when you go back, be sure to notice that they're Crane. But this building was built in 1932, and my understanding is it was built as one of the first neighborhood Safeway grocery stores in Fort Worth. Of course, 1933, the year following, was when Science and Sanity came out. So there's a nice historical connection there. Also in 1933, 4 blocks up the street at 1812 College Avenue, my father was born. So there's a little bit of a connection, a family connection, as well as a institute connection. But we're here tonight to dedicate our new home and to honor specifically those people whose name we have chosen to place on the new home, which is Reed House, to honor Charlotte and Alan Walker Reed. So I'd like to ask Bruce and Susan now to share a little bit about Alan